Hello and welcome to the Road from Emmaus podcast. I'm Jason Lowe, joined by Andrew Chow, and we are two totally ordinary Catholic guys hoping to share our journeys. Like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, we've each encountered Christ in our lives. Join us as we talk about what comes next. One more week. In just a few more days, Andrew and Cheryl will be saying yes in front of God to spending the rest of their lives together. Is Andrew ready? We invited Gabby Song and Cheryl Chan, two longtime friends of ours, going back to our days at university together, to find out. We asked Andrew to share about his relationship with Cherry, what their discernment process has been like, and otherwise grill him, just to make sure he knows what he's doing. We're joined by a special guest halfway through, so make sure you listen to the whole thing. I think I've mentioned this before on one of our previous episodes, but whenever I put together and edit the podcast, I just kind of randomly come up with a title at the very end. It's just like, I finish with the podcast editing and it's like, oh, I need to come up with a title somehow. In prepping for this episode, the title that I had originally come up with, if you go back and to our last episode with a guest, we had Father Raphael Ma on. And it was like something with Father Raphael Ma. I forgot. I should have looked up what the actual title was. But as a sneak peek, as a sneak preview, today's episode we're going to be talking to Andrew about him getting married, which is coming up. And so the title that I had initially kind of come up with was Andrew's Getting Married. And we have a couple guests today, which we're very excited about, and I'll quickly introduce them in a second. But their names are Cheryl and Gabby. So the title I wanted to go with was Andrew's Getting Married, and then with Cheryl and Gabby, because like that's what I did last time when I had a guest on. But I don't think that would work out very well if I went with that title. So anyway, on that note, I'd like to express our gratitude and our appreciation. We have two really, really special guests today, two longtime friends of both me and Andrew, dating back to when we were all at university at Western in London together. Gabby Song, Cheryl Chan, welcome to our podcast. You are our first ever female guests, our second and third ever human guests, and our third and fourth ever guests if you count Peter the Spider. Oh. From one of our earlier episodes. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Andrew, are you not proud about Peter the Spider being on our podcast?
I was like, are you really going there right now? I was like trying to like find a way to like cut you off. I'm like, we're not. Why are we talking about this again? Like,
whenever like Gabby and Cheryl are like, who is Peter the Spider? Whenever we bring on a guest, I definitely am going to mention Peter the Spider like every single time, 100% of the time. So moving on from that, so like I said, Gabby and Cheryl, we've all been friends for like, I don't know, like 6-7 years or something like that, probably 5, 6, 7 years. Like I said, we all went to university together. We all more or less met there as part of the Chinese Catholic community in London. So we're really excited to have you on. And like I mentioned off the top, we are going to roast Andrew a bit, I guess. So Andrew is getting married next week. Andrew and Cherry are getting married next week, not with Cheryl and Gabby. And so we just thought it would be a bit of a fun episode to, I don't know, ask Andrew some questions just to make sure that he's ready for his marriage, for his vocation that he's been discerning for a few years now, and have some fun with it. Are you ready for this, Andrew?
I was saying to Cherry before this that like we should have done this episode like 6 months ago, because now if I fail, like, do we need to postpone the wedding? Like, what's gonna happen?
I know, you got 1 week left, man.
I know, I gotta figure it out. Get a prep class or something.
I was thinking that. It was like, well, what if the outcome of this is that you're not ready to get married? Like, you find out on the podcast, the whole world finds out before Cherry finds out.
Everything's just awkward, and we just show up to the day and just like, well, this is kind of weird now.
All right. Well, I anticipate this might be a bit of a longer. It'll be a fun podcast, I would expect, but it might be a bit of a longer one. Obviously, we have 4 people fighting for airtime. So, why don't we just dive into it here? Andrew, we're gonna warm you up with a few questions before we really dive into it. So, I think the easy one maybe is just, the last year and a half now we've all been dealing with the COVID pandemic. A lot of our friends have been, you're not the only ones engaged. Obviously, a few of our other friends are also engaged, and I think we've all been hearing stories about wedding planning and how COVID has kind of delayed the process of wedding planning. How has COVID affected you and Cherry in terms of planning for your wedding?
It was interesting because we had the benefit of not starting the planning until after COVID started, so nothing really was thrown off by that in that kind of same sense. Because we kind of knew going into this was the, I guess, context that we were working in. I don't know if either of us expected to last the whole time, but we were kind of prepared for that eventuality and knew that the way we planned would have to be assuming the worst. So in that way, we haven't had to adjust things too much, which is kind of nice. Luckily, we were able to agree early on that like we wouldn't do a big banquet or anything, and that saved a lot of headaches in terms of the stuff that happened with COVID. And then we had both agreed that the only thing that is a must for us is that we get married in a church on this date. And like everything else is like wonderful things that we really, really want to happen, but if it can't, it can't. And that really alleviated a lot of the stress from us. So there's not too much anxiety about making things happen. It was, if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, we have our minimum and that's going to happen. So it wasn't too bad because of that.
Was there any specific reason for the particular date?
So actually, we've missed my target date twice now. So I wanted to propose on July the 16th. So it's the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Just because we had both started growing a lot in kind of our interior life, and just in our own spiritual life. And a lot of the Carmelites really kind of, are sponsors of and just really doctors and champions of like those spiritualities. And so it was really fitting that, the timing of when I wanted to propose was right around that. Because I basically, when I was looking for a day to propose, I just looked at like the church calendar and I was like, what feast days are coming up? And then I found Our Lady of Mount Carmel and I was like, this is wonderful. This is beautiful. So then that week, the forecast was to rain on the day of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So I was like, all right, I guess not. So I did the day before. So July 15th, which is the Feast of St. Bonaventure. And then now we're getting married on July 17th. So I literally missed twice. But yeah, that's why.
That's just how it works sometimes. That's nice. It's nice that you were targeting a feast day. I remember July 16th as my dad's birthday. So, you can choose to remember as Our Lady of Mount Carmel feast day. I will remember it as my dad's birthday.
It's pretty important too, I guess.
I guess. What are you most looking forward to in marriage?
Oh man, this will be the 45 minutes. I think really, we have been getting ourselves ready for this point for so long between me and Cherry. I'm sure we'll get into this, but like our relationship has shifted so much over the course of the 5.5 years or however long it's been now that we've been together. Just over 5.5 years. And particularly the last 2-3 years or so has really been like on a really good upward trajectory in our relationship with each other and our relationship with God. And it's just, knowing that this will be a sacrament that gives us the graces to continue that in a more beautiful way, I think it's really, really something I'm really looking forward to, because like kind of the promise is that as good as things have been in the way our relationship has grown, there's something better coming. I think that's what I'm probably the most excited for.
I thought it was really beautiful how you said earlier in the first question, just like how you guys just focused on wanting to get married, like focusing on the sacrament. Gabby, if you're watching on YouTube, Gabby gave a big thumbs up when you were sharing about that. And like so much of this, so much of wedding planning, whenever we think about it, like we get caught up in like the details of figuring out the banquet and planning the itinerary and everything. It's funny because 2 weeks ago when I messaged you and Cherry about like, oh, what is the itinerary for the day of the actual wedding, and both of you were like, it's not really done yet, we don't really have one yet. And it's like, on one hand, I just went in straight away and I was like, here, I will make you guys your itinerary. But also on the other hand, it's like, yeah, leave it up to God, and the important thing is that the mass will happen. And
they did have an itinerary though.
Roughly,
we did. We had a rough one, but we didn't like actually have it written out.
It wasn't
like,
up to Jason's standards.
Yeah, wait till I show you what I actually made, Gabby.
Okay, got it.
For context, which I probably should have opened up with, both Gabby and I are on Andrew and Cherry's in Cherry's wedding. Okay, both Gabby and I are in Andrew and Cherry's wedding party, is what I was trying to say. Cheryl is helping out with music, so we are all grateful that you've invited us to be part of your special day, Andrew.
I'm honored that you're all coming as well. It's really seriously.
That's for Cherry,
Yeah, it's
well,
maybe for Cherry.
Listen, I get it. I am marrying up, so it's fine. I'll take the crumbs I can get.
Gabby, do you want to move into the first question that we had for under getting to know his relationship with Cherry more?
Sure. Get ready. It's gonna get spicy here, but just as an intro, I mean, I told Jason this already, but I hate this, spotlight on me. I'm kind of introverted in a way, but Jason said this is basically just grilling Andrew, and I said I'll take the opportunity to publicly roast Andrew. So here we are. That's why I'm doing this. So, okay. My first question is, I kind of know the answer to this already, but so, yeah, my question is, when did you know that Cherry was the one you wanted to discern marriage with? The reason why I'm laughing is because back when Andrew first started dating Cherry, he told me he knew the second day he met her.
The second day?
The second day of GT, which is this big Chinese Catholic retreat, annual retreat that we go to. But Andrew said that he knew starting the second day. I mean, that could still hold true. It could have been.
There you go.
It could
I don't even need to answer.
I was going to say, Gabby's just answering this question for you. So.
No, I'm just asking to confirm if that's still true or,
It is.
Yeah?
It's really eerie to think about. I've talked to different people about this because, just over the course of our relationship, it's always the thing people ask, right? Like, how do you feel? Like, when do you think about getting married? I was like, well, I always kind of knew that we were going to get married, and it's a weird thing to say out loud because it sounds like I'm just literally that guy from You, right? It's like just the stalker who's like, we're going to get married. But more so in the sense that there was just this unfounded conviction that this was going to happen, this was right, this is it, and the rest of the relationship was growing into what that would mean, and so it was I wasn't rushed to make it happen, but at the same time I was never questioning that it was going to happen. So yeah, it was really it went very quickly from this is a pretty girl to yeah, we're gonna get married, and
in the span of 48 hours apparently.
In the span of 48 hours, it was and then the biggest question for me, I know this isn't the question, but the biggest thing for me was so how soon is too soon to ask her out? Because I know this is gonna how long do I need to wait? Is this kind of weird? Is this really creepy? I don't really know what to do.
How did you know though? How did you know so soon that this was gonna happen?
That's the thing, right? It's not I can say that I sat down, I rationed it out or reasoned it or anything like that. It was just, I want to say, St. John of the Cross talks about the spiritual part of the soul and the sensual part of the soul. In sense of there's this deeper part of the soul that connects better with God, essentially, right? The spiritual side. And I feel that was it. That side of me just felt it right away. And it's interesting because it's really hard to articulate what that means. And I still can't really say it per se, right? But there's just, over time, it's just continued to manifest in a lot of different ways. For example, I was talking to my spiritual director the other day about some different topic, right? How I was saying, love as a gift of self and being able to really, discover your relationship with God in that. And I was talking about it in the context of relationships, right? Where, someone had been having some hard times with, relationships and saying what they want in the other. And then, for me, I was saying, well, no, it's what do I want to give to the other rather than what do I want from the other. And to kind of talk about that piece. And then, that was where, again, my spiritual director affirmed in me, hey, this is a really, really great, this is a really great testament that, this is your vocation, because the fact that you're discovering the truth of what God's love is through this sort of spousal relationship, right, is such a good effort. And so it's little things like this over time that continue to affirm that deep conviction. But it was just an unexplainable conviction. I could never put it into words, right? It's not I'm going to marry Cherry because of X, Y, and Z things that I like about her.
You just
I like things about her, obviously, but that's not why, right?
Good thing you do.
It's that cheesy saying, it's when you know, you know.
Literally, right?
I don't think Cherry knew at first, though. But
no, I don't think so.
Andrew definitely grew on it.
What do you think is her side? What do you think is her side? Andrew.
Like how long until she knew?
Yeah, yeah.
Man,
She's
I
still
don't know,
thinking
like,
about
when
it.
I proposed. I think Cherry is the type to really kind of so our personalities are really different as well, right? So I'm the type to like when I think something is right, I dive head first. Like it took me like 2 weeks to decide to like move to Toronto, which is like a huge decision, right? So stuff like that is like I just dive in head first, and Cherry really is the kind of person who wants to like really sit on things and dwell with it and kind of chew on it. I think probably a couple of years before she really had that like, yes, this is probably the right thing, and then maybe another year or two to like fully affirm it, you know. I think up until that point it was like, you know, really getting to know what our relationship was looking like, and also, you know, the first couple of years of our relationship, maybe first 3 years even, was very different from our relationship for the last couple of years as well. So I think when we had that pivot, that also made a huge difference for her as well, I think, in terms of really being able to not just say, yeah, we're probably going to get married, but like, yes, this is the man I want to get married to, and this is like where I see my vocation, right?
For sure. And I think you did a great job at, you know, helping her solidify that faith in the relationship. I mean, you had to, but in a way, like you made a lot of sacrifices along the way, you know, to help her, you know, be confident in this relationship. And you mentioned something interesting about, you know, how you're the type to go head first, and whereas Cherry is the type to just kind of dwell on things and ponder about things. And that's why I think you guys are such a good balance for each other. You guys are total opposites in a lot of ways, but that's why it's such a good balance. So I guess like in your dating, did you kind of ever see that play out where your differences actually complemented each other instead of, you know, finding it frustrating? Or maybe there were times that you found it frustrating too, but yeah, how did you guys complement each other while dating?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I ever really... I mean, other than like small frustrations, I think like those happen in life anyways, right? So I'm not looking at it as like those, you know, day-to-day annoyances that you might have, you know, like just someone at work says something that irks you. It's like, whatever, you know, that happens every day with anyone, right? But in terms of real like big frustrations, I can't really think of any. I think, you know, a really big thing, at least from my side of the equation, for her, I think it's a different story. But,
I was gonna
She has a long list.
but like for me, you know, I think because the relationship started with that conviction, it was always a matter of like, okay, like, you know, there's something here, you know, like I need to be patient, I need to figure this out, rather than like, oh my goodness, not this again, or anything like that, right? So there are things that are different about us for sure. In terms of things that complement, definitely, you know, that's the laundry list for sure. Like the ways that I've seen myself grow, and I'm sure you guys have seen me grow too over the course of our relationship. It's crazy. Like, I was very much that like obnoxious in your face person, and I still am, but in slightly less rude of a way.
We agree.
neither deny nor confirm, but
right. I think I'm less rude about it now. But you know, there are little things like that where like the best testament of it in terms of like how much I used to just be a chatterbox and like mindless talk, right? Like that's really, I guess, the best way. Like I have a lot less mindless talk now compared to before. It's like when I'm with my family now, my parents are like thrown off by how much quieter I am. Like they're like, they always say to me like, you used to have so much to say, and I'm like, okay, well, no, I don't. Like, you know, and it's like little things like that where like we've slowly grown with each other and we've learned these things from each other. I think we've had a really good balance of admiration of those qualities in each other and like growth towards that together.
That's great. That's great. I mean, you were already halfway there, but one of the questions I think we were really interested in, and probably the audience, is just like, how do you think your relationship with Cherry has changed you?
One of the things for sure, like Cherry really grounds me, right? I think one of the analogies for a relationship that I heard at one point was that in many relationships there's a flagpole and a flag, and I'm the flag. But
Interesting.
But you know, it's really she's so steady, you know. Because I'm such a person who like dives headfirst into things, I go everywhere, right? And there's good and bad to it, right? There's things that I can experience, there's things that I can explore. But at the same time, like, there is too much, right? So she really grounds me, reels me in, and says, like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to go with this impulse? Are you sure? Or whatever. And that's a really, really big thing for us. Another piece as well is my career even, you know? So, like, a lot of different parts of my life. The career path that I'm in right now, I wouldn't even have known about at all if it wasn't for her. And she's really encouraged me through that. So I think, you know, I've never been lacking in confidence in sense of like being able to stand up in front of a room, but you know, that actual like more deep set confidence that like things are happening the right way. You know, the conversations that we have really helped me with that, where, you know, she and I will talk about where we've come from, and just having someone we can have those real conversations without any of like the you know, the fanfare or like the unnecessary sugarcoating of things and that kind of stuff, but just like a real like, yes, like you did a good job, like this is a really good work that you've done, this is really good for you, and those sorts of conversations like that is night and day.
That's amazing.
Do you think your relationship has changed her?
I think so. I think she is less reserved on the flip side of things.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that she has gained a lot of self-confidence as well in terms of like her own ability too, right? Like I look at her and like I joke about marrying up, but she really is an amazing woman. And, you know, she doesn't always recognize that, I think. And so, you know, just being able to help her affirm that and be like, look, like people are amazed, don't just take it for face value. They're amazed because of X, Y, and Z. Like this is good thing. These are good things that you've done, right? And those sorts of things, and giving her that confidence to like stand on her 2 feet and go out and be able to have pride in her work and have pride in herself, and also like different things around too, right? Like being more selective with how she spends her time sometimes, you know. You know, there would be Cherry when we first met, could be influenced by a lot of different people, right? She was very much you know, the kind of person who like went with the flow in some ways, that, you know, could not always turn out too well. And so, you know, we would have conversations about that and say like, hey, like, are you sure this is how you want to be spending your time? And they could be tough conversations, but I think that has gotten us both to a place where we understand each other better, and I think she's become more of a critical thinker because of that, and I think that that's an area that she's really grown into.
I was watching Gabby and Cheryl's faces just as you were like, "Oh, she's really an amazing woman" or whatever, and like I swear, like they melted or something because like
I was trying not to look at any of you when I was saying that. I was like, am I really saying these things? Like.
I was dying, but you know, it's so true. Cherry is amazing. Like I love her more than Andrew, really. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right in the sense that like because she's such a humble person, she, you know, often downplays the amazing attributes that she carries and is gifted to. And then you're really good at affirming her on those areas and pointing them out so that she really understands how great of a woman she is. And not only in her work and in her, you know, talents and strengths, but you also do that in her faith as well. I think through you, she's grown a lot more confident in vocalizing her beliefs and you know, standing firm in her faith and just you know, exploring deeper in her relationship with God. So I think, you know, that's something that you really helped. You know, obviously she, you know, it's between her and God, but you definitely helped her in that sense too.
Cheryl, anything you want to jump in with?
You mentioned like how like sometimes you guys have tough conversations, like so like I was just wondering, so like how do you guys resolve conflicts, or like how do you argue?
Good question.
Yeah, we haven't really had an argument, but believe it or not, it's we really haven't. But I think the big thing really is that we're both pretty good at zooming out and just talking things through, I think. And we always come in with this kind of understanding that we are both pursuing the same thing. So if there's a difference of opinion, there must be a reason for it. Like you're not coming out to sabotage me, I'm not coming out to sabotage you. So like, why are we thinking differently? And I think we also both have a really, I think, one of the good things about our relationship is that we both kind of are able to recognize when the other person is really passionate about something, and like, maybe I'll take the backseat for now. Like I don't need to be right now. And just like, let's let things play out, and then, you know, maybe I'm wrong and she's right, and things actually play out that way, and then I can say to her, hey, you know, I was wrong, you're right, you're like, I shouldn't have disagreed with you, or vice versa. Like, you know, she lets things play out my way and I was wrong, right? And then she says like, and we deal with it together, right? It's not like I told you so, right? It's a, okay, like, here's why, here are the things that I saw, let's work through it. So, you know, I think both of us are good at keeping those negative emotions out of it. It's not to say we've never disagreed. Like, there are lots of things that we disagree on. But I think both of us really, we come with a certain respect for how the other person is going to be approaching it. Like, we know that we're both pursuing the same thing, like I said earlier, and that makes it a lot easier to just say, like, okay, like, we're coming from different angles. Like, where are you coming from? Where am I coming from? Let's figure this out.
Yeah, I think that attitude that you mentioned is very important. Like, you guys both trust that you want the best for each other. So you're not going to think that, you know, that the other person is doing something out of spite or anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
And then even when that does happen, because like, there will be times when like we throw temper tantrums at each other, right? Like, just literally, I think yesterday we were on a call and I was just like really grumpy from a bad day at work, and like, she mentioned something that ticked me off a little bit, and I was just like not having it. She kind of just like wrapped up the call, and then we didn't really talk about it. And then like a couple hours later, I was like, wow, like, I was kind of a dick, like, you know. So
are you allowed to
I'm
say
gonna.
that?
Let's go with yes. Let's go with yes.
But like, I wasn't the kindest in that situation, and then yeah, so I just texted her like, hey, like, I'm so sorry I was grumpy, like, it's not you, right? And then we just move on. So it's that, like, also the recognition from each of us that like, it's on us to reconcile with each other too, right? Like, if I was wrong, I was wrong. If she was wrong, she was wrong. And then we both come to the table and say like, hey, that wasn't fair of me. You know, I'm sorry. And then both of us are always really okay with that right away.
The reason why I laughed when you said you guys have never gone into an argument, it was not because I didn't believe you. It's because I thought back to all the arguments that you and I had while we were serving in the same ministry, and I was like, oh my gosh, Terry is really a saint. No, but
the level that we butt heads is like, I don't know if I've ever worked with someone that like butt heads with me as much as you do.
That's
and
because...
like, and like, in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Like, we same thing though. Like, even when we butt heads, it's like, it's never like an upsetting thing. Like, I won't say we don't get upset, but it's like, it's never like a, like, I hate your guts, you know? Like, it's never like that. It's like a, you're so frustrating to work with right now. Okay, whatever. But like,
I'm just kidding, yeah.
you know, it's like, oh, like, in this moment, like, this is really rough. But then, you know, we both know that we are coming from a good place, going for the same thing.
Exactly.
And then that still, like, I don't think any of our disagreements have ever ended in disagreement. Even with the amount of conflict that you and I have, right? We've always ended up finding a resolution, moving forward.
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, you know, not to bring this to too neat of a central theme or whatever, but it's really just keeping love at the center of it, right? Whether it's friendship, whether it's, you know, your life partner or whoever it is, like, it's not, disagreements are going to happen. Let's be honest here, for sure. But you know, that's why we're all human beings with different perspectives, and we argue about things, but that's how we grow. And I think finding that middle ground and finding that ability to still love, not be petty, like you were saying, find the humility to apologize, like you were saying, and admit when you're wrong and not be stubborn, and all those things. It's just love at the center of it. So
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead, because I was gonna use something.
I was gonna say, so there's the priest in Vancouver that I mentioned so many times, Father Justin Huang. He's brought this up in a few homilies, and like, he'll always go back to the same thing, which I think is so true. Is not just recognizing, but being willing to change your opinion also makes a huge difference when you have a conflict of opinion. Like, to say something you have said has changed my opinion and I now agree with you isn't just humble. It's the more mature thing to do, right? Because the fact that like I'm lacking knowledge to have the same opinion as you is not a reflection on me. It's just I didn't know that, right? So I think that's a big piece of it too, is like I can change my opinion and like not be embarrassed about it.
And that takes a lot of maturity and trust too, to trust the other person that they're not going to use that to manipulate. And yeah, like Jason said, there was love at the center of it all, whether it's between you and Cherry or in the friendship that we had. Like at our friendship, we had the best interest of our ministry in mind, which came from having God at the center of it all. And I mean, we try to, right? And I'm going to do a little cheesy segue that Jason likes to do here. Speaking of having God at the center of it all.
Wait. Before you do that, before you move into that, Gabby. So there was something I wanted to bring up.
Sorry.
I was going through the prep and I was thinking like it wouldn't really make sense for us to do this whole grilling of Andrew without having Cherry involved. So I was thinking that it would actually be a really awesome idea if we had Cherry Vong join, the bride-to-be. Hello, Cherry. Welcome to our episode.
Hello.
So, as an aside, this is the second call that I've been surprised with Cherry on today. So my oh, okay.
You can tell the story.
Yeah, so my coworkers booked this meeting with the premise of like doing something really amazing, and I told like everyone who had ears, and then it turns out that was a ruse, and now I need to tell everyone I was a fraud. But anyways, so they were throwing this whole like work party for me in terms of like this wedding shower, and I was like surprised enough, and then Cherry joins the call, and I was like, who's next? Pope Francis? Like, what's going on here? So
oh, wow.
Well, speaking of Pope Francis
oh my goodness. Okay.
All right. Well, now that you are adequately surprised with a terrible reaction, Gabby, you can move back into the question that you were about to ask.
Oh, I was, totally happy to have this. Sorry, I kind of forgot that was the time. But anyways, so speaking of having Christ at a center, Andrew, I don't know if you remember, but 2 years ago, I think, you told me how your relationship with Cherry drastically changed when you guys really, really just strive to have Christ as a center and the only focus. So you had this analogy of, as, Cherry looked at Christ face to face, and she grew closer and closer to God in that sense. And you walked along with Christ side by side in brotherhood. In doing so, you guys were brought closer and closer together. Do you remember telling me that?
Yeah, so actually that was stolen from another friend of ours who gave a talk on male and female spirituality. But yeah, it really made a huge difference. Kind of just, I think, for a while, Cherry and I, and Cherry can attest to this too, we had grown so focused on each other that, we weren't really going anywhere. Like the relationship wasn't going anywhere. Like if you're looking at each other, you're not going anywhere, right? And then, there was a turning point, and we kind of both on our own, which was the really miraculous part. It wasn't like we said like, all right, forget each other, let's look at God. Like it wasn't anything like that. We just kind of both on our own had these different turns towards God and started really pursuing that relationship. And yeah, so the analogy is that there are unique ways that men and women can relate to Jesus, where a woman can relate to Jesus spousally in a way that men can't, and men can relate to Jesus fraternally in a way that women can't, right? Like, I'm not going to look at Jesus and be like, oh my gosh, like, I want you to be my husband. Like, that doesn't really work out. But I can look at him and be like, all right, like, I really want you to be my bro. Like, I want you to really be one of the guys, and we're really good friends that way, which wouldn't work as well for Cherry, and then vice versa. So that idea where, like, both, I'm journeying with Jesus, like, both facing the same direction, and then Cherry's facing from the other direction, but we both move closer to Jesus. We end up closer to each other. That's the analogy, right? And, I think definitely, in our relationship, it really happened, and it happened really organically in a way that we didn't really notice or recognize until, like, probably a year into it. Like, we kind of just were focused on God, we were sharing that with each other, and we were both happy about it. But then, like, a year later, we were like, wow, like, look at our relationship now compared to where we were a year ago, right? And it was just night and day.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like, if anything, that's the most important thing out of this conversation. I could be biased, but so how has your faithfulness in Christ helped you grow in, your love and faithfulness to Cherry? And you can, feel free to give some concrete examples too.
No pressure. She's right in front
No
of
pressure.
Yeah.
And Cherry, you too, actually, because you're part of this relationship too. So
Yeah.
In case you weren't aware.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's not necessarily in like obvious ways per se, like to give concrete examples, but I think at the heart of it, really this goes into a realization of like why marriage is a vocation, right? So this is a piece that I've become like really passionate about over the last year or so, because I think a lot of people look at marriage as just a happening, like just an event, where like you declare that you're loved and then like that's it, versus a vocation where the implication of it being a vocation is that this is a lifelong call, right? This is a journey that you're embarking on. This is to put it in other words, like this is the best way for you to get to heaven, right? This is the way that God wants you to become a saint. So when you put it in that framework, right, then the question becomes like, how? Like, how am I actively going to become a saint in this vocation? And, looking at this piece, where my head goes right away is that a lot of people talk about marriage being the closest you can come to witnessing the Trinity on earth, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, what does that mean? Well, what that means to me is that, like, the relationships that you see in the Trinity between the Father and the Son, between the Son and the Father, between the Father and the Holy Spirit, between the Spirit and the Son, like, all of those relationships are found in spousal love, right? Or should be found in spousal love in a good marriage. So then that means that if I want a good marriage, I should grow closer to those relationships. And I think that's what it was, right? So for both of us, as we grew closer to God, as we focus on God, it's like the cheat sheet for having a good marriage, right? Mm-hmm. It's, we're growing closer and closer towards what we're trying to mirror. And like in doing so, you can't help but pick things up along the way. And those have helped us, I think, to be formed more into, growing into this vocation, being ready for this vocation and ready to start this vocation, really, right? It's not like we're going to get married next week and then it's just like, bam, we're a perfect couple, like nothing like that. Mm-hmm. It's more that we are now embarking on the right journey where getting married now, it just feels like an affirmation of that and more graces to continue on that journey. And I think that's kind of what it is for me, at least.
Cherry, do you agree with Andrew's assessment, or is this kind of a one-way relationship perspective thing that's going on here?
No, I totally agree. And I think one of the things that I think I heard this maybe years ago at like a Catholic retreat in university, but I think the topic was also marriage. And one thing that struck out to me was that once you're married or you're calling to marriage, it's your responsibility to like lift your spouse to get to heaven, mm-hmm. and vice versa. And that like totally like it hasn't left my mind since like I heard that. And so like definitely discerning into marriage, and like now even just 1 week away from marriage, it's like constantly, how can I lift up Andrew for the rest of my life to get to heaven? And then like, of course, he's going to be doing the same for me. So I think just like keeping that in mind as well, like really increases that bond, I guess.
I think the whole thing about lifting up your spouse to heaven is obviously 100% true, but something that it's very easily forgotten. Like Andrew was saying, sometimes we just look at marriage as an event or as just another step kind of thing, and suddenly it's just, you're now spending the rest of your lives together, as it should be, and then your next step is having children and growing a family, and then you see your children off to university. Like it's easy to, as always, get lost in the practical side of things. things, the functional side of things. But I think to remember that, you know, you're responsible for lifting yourself to heaven, but also your spouse and the people around you. That's what it means to be a Christian, and it's so central to never forget that. I was watching Cheryl and Gabby earlier while you were answering Cherry, and I think they melted again when you were talking about lifting the spouse to heaven, because earlier Andrew said something really, really sweet, and I think they also melted at that time as well. You can go back and listen later.
I will definitely.
You guys are so cute.
I was
Thanks,
wondering when I would tear up, and that was the moment when you said, you know, it has never left your thought that, you know, you're going to be responsible to bring Andrew into heaven. And just hearing that, and I already knew that, you know, that was your mission and your heart as you approach this vocation, but just repeating that again, I just know that Andrew's soul is in such good hands, and so is yours, Cherry, and I'm just so happy for that and grateful.
So
Gabby.
I have what I believe is the hardest question on this list of questions that Gabby, Cheryl, and I put together. So Andrew, I'm going to throw it to you, and Cherry, you can chime in, obviously. But this is actually a question that my girlfriend came up with, so it's coming from her. Andrew, when was the last time you died to yourself in your relationship?
Oh man.
It is a difficult question and really putting you on the spot.
Perhaps
Yeah.
to give you some time to think about this, perhaps Cherry's last time that she died to herself was last night's phone call.
Like every time she should talk to me.
Yeah, more or less.
Or when you're just super grumpy and
Cherry doesn't even need to spare a second thought. It's just like, 2 hours ago.
That's a very good question. It's so funny because, like, once you asked that question, I thought of a time when I thought that maybe Andrew had to go through some hardships to make a decision for the both of us.
Yeah,
And
so what do you think it was?
I think it was the decision to move over to Toronto so that both of us can continue, you know, like actually be dating in the same city, and also like really growing in that relationship with each other closer, because before we were long distance for quite a while. So I thought that was like a really big risk that he had to take as well, right? Like coming to Toronto and like not having a place to stay and like having to figure out like his footing. So that was a big one.
I love this because, okay, so obviously you weren't part of our conversation earlier when we were talking about this, but literally Andrew talked about moving over to Toronto from Vancouver, and he was all talking about like, he was just diving headfirst into it, like he barely even like had to think about it, like he only took him 2 weeks. Knew, yeah, he only had to think about it for a bit, but I think the best part of this is that like this actually just shows how you looked at it, I guess, in terms of you totally okay, like let's be serious. Like obviously, you know, Andrew has close ties with his family. He's been in Vancouver for most of his life up until that point. Like as much as head first as he dove into that decision, like let's not forget or lose sight of the fact that it was probably still a hard decision for you, right? And I want to say that like it's so awesome to be able to see Cherry's perspective and just recognizing that, you know, this was something, you know, maybe he made the decision easier than, you know, the rest of us might have. But I think, you know, this was still something that was probably difficult and something that was challenging.
Yeah, you know, it's actually really interesting because I had a similar conversation about this with another friend of ours who had moved from Australia to Canada. And we had talked about how it actually was a surprisingly easy decision. And you know what? Like, I think I really attribute this to, it has to be the grace of God. Because, like, objectively, it would be a difficult decision. Like, you're right. Yeah. My roots were in Vancouver. You know, my career was in Vancouver. I had built a network in Vancouver. Like, there were a lot of reasons why I would stay. And over here, you know, there objectively, if you're kind of going to stack it, like, there weren't as many reasons for you to move to Toronto. And it should have been a really difficult decision, but it really wasn't. And similarly for that other friend. So, you know, this is almost an illustration of like you know those mission trips that you hear of, like, oh, like so and so is like moving to X country for like X number of years for a mission trip to serve the poor, and you're like, wow, that's amazing. They're like, no, I'm gonna do it, right? I attribute it to the same thing. Like, this is just, God said, like, this is something you got to do, and I'm gonna give you the courage to do it, whether you realize it or not, and make it obvious for you that this is something you have to do. And then, like, when it came to it, it was just, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So it's really funny because everyone talks of, like, a lot of people talk to me about this as a big sacrifice, but I've never seen it that way. I really haven't. It was a move that had to happen, and it happened. And then the 6 months afterwards, that was a sacrifice. But like the move itself wasn't the end of the world. And if anything, I would say probably just the distance, even after moving over here, that's probably something that comes to mind for me more so. The distance from, so I live in Toronto, Cherry's in Markham, and like going up and down, particularly more recently, and like the disruption of my regular day-to-day life to do that's probably comes to mind for me a lot more than even the move from Vancouver, right? To really kind of be in situations where I don't have time in my weekends to necessarily, do the things I want to do in terms of unwinding, cleaning up, meal prepping, and those sorts of things. But, it's not something that I like to bring up because it had to happen. But in terms of sacrifices and dying to myself, like, I would say that probably the most that comes to mind for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think it was really great just to kind of witness already, the fruit of having both of you on the podcast and seeing the different perspectives that you bring into each other's lives, right? Like, for us as, I guess, third-party witnesses, is kind of like, obviously we're good friends with you, we're close friends with the both of you, but to see how you both complement each other, just even answering these questions, I think that's been a blessing already, really, and definitely an inspiration for, any one of us who are discerning marriage, and who might be dating or discerning a relationship in some kind of way. On that note, obviously you guys have been getting ready for marriage for 51 weeks now, and so you've had to go through marriage prep, and I think that's something we want to quickly ask you about because, as part of getting married in the church, we are asked to go through a marriage prep course, a marriage prep program. So I wanted, one or the both of you to just quickly tell those of us, because a lot of us don't really know, what is marriage prep about? What's it like? What's it for? And what has been your experience going through the program?
I can try to take a stab at that first from our experience. So, marriage prep is, for us, it's kind of like a 4 to 6 week program where we meet weekly and we have sessions with a clergy member at the church to kind of talk about marriage in the lens of the Catholic Church and some of the teachings of it, and also kind of like some of the responsibilities really of what is marriage in a Catholic point of view, the 4 pillars, which I hope I don't get it wrong, of love. Oh my gosh, Andrew.
It's free, total, faithful, and fruitful.
Yes, yes. So it's those 4 pillars, and we always go back to that like every week. So for a program, and some of the things that they also teach is kind of like practical skills and tools of kind of living together, like being in marriage, like finances, conflict resolution, and communication skills. And kind of like when we're thinking about starting a family, touch a little bit on natural family planning, which for me is really just understanding like the woman's body and making sure oh no, oh my gosh, just like understanding the woman's body so that like we know when to be intimate if we want to start a family or not. So that's kind of some of the things that we learned.
So we specifically, sorry, go on, Andrew, go on.
No, I was gonna say, I think with marriage prep, I'd almost, for any couples that are getting ready for marriage now, I would treat it as more of an intro to marriage prep than being the entirety of marriage prep, because it touched on a lot of things, but it really didn't dive deep into many things. So it gave a good idea of like the sorts of topics that you would want to explore, the sorts of topics that maybe you're not as familiar with potentially, and then it kind of gave that foundational piece, I suppose, to like know what things to explore and to grow in more.
What about it has been fruitful for you guys? Oh, sorry, Cheryl.
Well, I was just gonna ask, like, so what are some things that you guys think are important to talk about
Yeah.
before marriage, and like that you guys may have talked about?
Yeah, I think like conflict resolution, communication. I kind of touched on like your communication habits with your family and like how does that translate into the relationship that you're going to be bringing into the marriage. So that was really helpful for us because like both of us have like our own tendencies to either, yeah, like I guess keep talking about the situation or like take a step back and see each other's perspectives. So it was really good for that. The marriage prep course also came with like workbooks where there were a lot of discussion questions as well. So it gave us a lot of time to kind of look into those questions and spend some time to talk to each other about our perspectives.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Nope. You go.
I think it was really good to do all of those things. Something else that we did as well that really helped us was we went through something that's called the Prepare Enrich questionnaire with a friend with Father Raphael Ma, actually, because he is trained to do that kind of interview. That was really cool as well. So essentially, what that was is a long list of questions. Actually, is quite extensive for us each to answer individually, which then generated a report. And essentially, what Father Raff did for us, and what any of the facilitators would do, is bring up points that might be worth having conversations about based on the differences in our responses. And it was a really, really good conversation that we had there about things that we hadn't thought about, right? So, for example, we had always thought that we were really good communicators for like the reasons that we talked about earlier, right? We never really came into any big conflicts. We kind of had always done a decent job, we thought, of conflict resolution in that way. But to see like there were greater levels of communication that we could reach as well, and to see where those opportunities sat was a really, really great thing. So I think that as a second step, or even as a further step for preparing for marriage, that was really, really wonderful.
I have a couple of friends who are also going through marriage prep, and definitely, I think they would say the same thing in terms of what you've already advised is maybe kind of treat it like an intro to marriage almost. It depends on the program that you go through. I have other friends who
Sure.
have definitely gone through a program that they found extremely fruitful. But it also depends on the couple itself. Like I was talking to my spiritual director like a couple months ago probably, and he was telling me about how there are definitely couples he screens who like he'll just bring up a simple questions about like how do they communicate or what is at the center of their relationship, and they often find that like they're actually not as ready for marriage as they initially thought. They weren't as prepared to have these conversations even about practical things, right? So Cherry talked about talking about finances or just general communication, and so it is really interesting to hear the different stories about how marriage prep gets people to that point of being ready to receive the sacrament when maybe for some of us it feels more natural or it feels more commonsensical, but I don't think that's always the case. So it's definitely really interesting to think about all of that. I think kind of the last thing that we want to kind of talk about here is the role that each of your families have had on the both of you. So like the opposite, the future in-laws is what I'm trying to get at. What do you think is I'll start with Cherry here, because obviously both of you have met each other's parents. Cherry, what is some good advice that you think Andrew's parents have given you?
It's okay. I would say I don't know if it's like a verbal advice, but it's definitely something that I've had observed through interacting with their family, and that's really the togetherness of a lot of the things that they do. A lot of the time that they spend together, I can see Andrew's parents both making time for each other in the morning to go on walks. I think that's like a really beautiful thing. It's like doing things together, having schedules that complement each other, and really following through, like having a habit about it. And I think that speaks volumes when I see that. That's something that I would want to have with Andrew in our relationship.
Morning time together. Get the notes down, Andrew. How about for you? In terms of interacting with Cherry's parents so much, like you're over almost every weekend. Anything that you picked up from them?
Yeah, I think they do a really good job of focus, like knowing what they find important and keeping the focus on those things. And I think that's a really important piece as well, to like know what your values are and really stick to it. To not be that flag in the wind that I brought up earlier, and kind of go where the wind takes you. And just, to know what those things are and be specific. So they do a really good job of being able to say, like, these are the things that are important to me, and I'm not wavering on these things. And then for other things to kind of remind each other, like, hey, like that might not be the most important thing, and then the other person to kind of accept that. So to be also really receptive to kind of prods from your spouse, right? To not always be right in that way. I think I've really seen that too.
I think it's really great that you guys have so much respect for both of each other's parents, and it's obvious that you guys are able to learn something and take away something from each other's family as well. And Cherry talks about that all the time to me, and how family is really important to her. Obviously not my parents-in-law, but something Andrew's parents had said, I think it was your mom actually, that really touched me. And I actually, Andrew was one who told this to me, but something that your mom had said, Andrew, and I still apply to my every relationship, with my relationship with my current boyfriend, or that I'm discerning with, and my relationship with my family. Just in every important relationship, I carry this advice. But I think your mom had said something about, don't aim for 50-50, because if you do, then you're just going to be frustrated about the injustice or the lack of. But aim for 70-30, where you're always trying to do more. You're always trying to give more than the half, and trying to meet across the halfway line. That way, if both of you guys aim for that, then there's overflow, there's abundance. And I think what she had talked about there is basically the highlight of sacrificial love, where we're called to die to ourselves, and the moment that we're tired and we don't want to do the dishes, we get up and do the dishes so that our spouse doesn't have to. It's like little things like that in life, and those things that you can bring to your relationship. And I just wanted to give a shout out to your mom, because I thought that was just so beautiful and something worthy of honoring.
It was actually, it was really funny how it came up.
It was for someone else's wedding, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was I was at the bachelor trip for someone else's wedding, and then it was my mom's birthday, so I called her, and she was like, "Oh, like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm on like my friend's bachelor trip." And she was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" Like, we're giving him advice. And she was like, "Here's some advice for him." And I was like, "What about me, Mom?" But but it was really, I really do hold on to that, and I share it with a lot of people too. Yeah. I actually forgot that I shared that with you, but it's a piece that it makes so much sense when you think about it.
Yeah, no, I haven't, because it's been such a great practice to me. So thank your mom for me.
So we're pushing the longest episode time we've ever had, but I think fairly so. This has been a lot of fun. We want to wrap up with something maybe a little bit on the fun side for both of you, Andrew and Cherry. And you, Andrew, you mentioned off the top how you guys had already agreed, you're not going to do a reception or a banquet or anything. And often what happens at those, wedding receptions, dinner receptions, is we get to do some wedding games. So we thought we would adapt one of the more common wedding games and do a little bit of rapid fire questions for the both of you. It's basically a podcast version of the shoe game, if you're familiar with it. Basically, what's going to happen is I'll ask you a really quick, obvious Andrew or Cherry question, and I want the both of you to just as whatever the first name that comes to mind as the answer. either one of you, like both of you, just answer who you think it is. So I'll do it. I'll do a couple examples before we actually get started. So, who's more organized?
Cherry.
Who's cleaner?
Cherry.
Cherry.
Okay. All right.
You're
So you
just-
guys,
you're just roasting
yes,
me.
basically all the good stuff is going to be
Part of
Cherry.
this.
All the bad stuff is going to be Andrew. Okay, so you guys
So
get the gist of
actually,
this.
as a fun, I think at wedding reception, what also people do is, they put like
They'll put their shoe like the male
It-
or
Yeah.
exactly.
You know,
So
should
should
be-
we do something like that as well for whoever's watching?
I don't
the
have
video?
anything.
I don't think. Yeah, you probably don't have time to get a shoe or get. A
No, I was
thing.
gonna say C for Cherry,
Oh,
and then
okay.
A for Andrew.
Okay, but you guys also need to say your whoever it is because
That's a podcast.
it's an
That's
audio
true.
podcast as well as
Yes.
a video podcast.
Okay.
It's okay. We did not organize this properly, so just blurt out whichever name comes to mind. Okay. So I'm gonna throw a few questions out to
Sounds
both
good.
of you. Okay. Who's the better cook?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Who's more patient?
Cherry.
Cherry.
No, actually, I don't know. Actually, that's pretty.
Cherry.
Okay, this one might require a little bit of thinking. Who has more friends from the Chinese Catholic community?
Cherry.
Ooh.
Cherry.
Yeah, you both in agreement?
Yeah.
I think Cherry basically stole all of Andrew's friends, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, like none of them are my friends now.
I have been there longer than you did.
Okay, I know the answer to this one. Who spends more money?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Who spends more time on their phone?
Andrew.
This
Well,
one I'm
actually,
interested
maybe
in.
Cherry.
Probably a close tie. Probably
Yeah,
me.
close tie.
Yeah.
Probably you, actually. Yeah, probably you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Andrew
Um,
doesn't have social media anymore, right? Like
That's
you
true.
don't have Instagram.
I have Facebook, but like
Yeah, Andrew
I
had
spend
cut
a lot of time.
a couple of things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know this one. Who's needier when they're sick?
Cherry.
Yeah?
Cherry.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, two more, and these are my two favorite ones. Who does Pixel like more?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Who likes Pixel more?
Cherry.
The sadness of that relationship. But it's okay, you guys are going to get a second cat when you get married, right?
We are.
You can
We
look
are.
forward to
And I'm gonna have nothing to do with it. I will never be in the same room as the cat for the first year, just to make sure.
Even if you don't, and you just keep Pixel, and once you guys start living together, it's okay. It's gonna same thing's gonna happen where Pixel's gonna like Cherry.
You're right. You're right.
So-
It's true.
Not to worry, Cherry.
Give it a little bit of time. Yes.
Exactly.
All right, so let's call it a wrap for this episode. Honestly, this was a lot of fun, ladies. So Gabby, Cheryl, thank you both for joining. Thank you for joining in this roasting and grilling of Andrew. Cherry, thank you for surprise dropping in. It was so wonderful to have both of you on for us to interview, and I think to learn from the both of you. Just we're all in relationships, the three of us, and we're discerning marriage as well, right? And to see you guys, a week from now, have the opportunity to say your vows and promise yourselves to each other and promise yourselves to God within the beautiful sacrament of marriage. Like it's gonna be, we're so lucky to be able to witness that. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Thank you to everyone who listened. Hopefully all of you had a lot of fun getting to know Andrew and Cherry a bit better. And if you want to roast Andrew, go and DM him, spam him with messages, and he will not be mad at you. All right, so
I thought we were going with hit the comment section below.
we're not at that level of podcasting yet. Like you have to be a certain level of professional to be able to say that spiel.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's it for today. Thanks everyone for listening. This was a lot of fun. God bless, and you'll hear from us soon in a few weeks.
Bye.
Bye.